Sitting with us tonight is James Moody, if you will.
Call me Jim.
You are the director?
I wish. No, I am the chair of
chair
of the Manchester chapter of Veterans Count.
Nice. So we're working with them for our beard competition. You can go back and check out those episodes, find out what's going on. You'll find the links for the fundraiser in the group. But we're here to talk about a little bit of that, but more about what you guys have going on, what you guys are about. Because until I went to Carl when we decided to do the beard competition, I never even heard of you guys. And I knew of Easter Seals. So it's
yeah, you guys work closely with Easter Seals, right?
We are a program of Easter Seals.
Oh, so you're
Yep.
pretty much of Easter Seals.
We are of and tight at the hip for sure. Well, let me give you some background. And Joe, to your point, well, first of all, thanks very much for having me. This beard competition is way cool. I shaved off my beard. Joe, you did too. Bill, I think you shaved yours off. I can't tell what's coming back in, but
I'm the only one who hasn't really grown anything back yet. 2 weeks into it, it'll get there.
Slowly but surely.
My PEDs will kick in soon.
There you go. Yeah. I didn't figure there'd be cheating at this competition, but
I'm starting to realize maybe we should have gave some people some head starts.
Obviously,
I told you I needed a head start, and you wanted me to go over 6.
But no, we really appreciate you guys stepping up to the plate and coming up with this idea. And we're always looking for new ideas for fundraising, and to me, this was a no-brainer. And I've talked to you guys before about this, that we're anything that's an easy lift, for us, and I thank you for doing most of the work. But whatever we raise from this is great, but it's also the awareness piece. And like you mentioned, Joe, we're 10 years into the program called Veterans Count, and there's veterans in New Hampshire still have not heard of us. Have no idea what we do, and of course your average citizen. So let me bore you with some details and background. So Veterans Count was started after Easter Seals first approached the Adjutant General, who was Major General Ken Clark, sometime during 2004. We had the largest deployment of New Hampshire National Guard soldiers since World War II. Mostly going to Iraq, some to Afghanistan, but mostly to Iraq. So Easter Seals, during that year-long tour of duty that we were gone, they started approaching General Clark, and they also were tied at the hip with the Department of Health and Human Services. And between those three organizations, the New Hampshire Guard, Easter Seals, and HHS, Easter Seals basically approached the Guard saying, hey, what can we do to help? You're going to have soldiers coming back. We have care coordinators, we have counselors. We may even have some financial resources, that we can use, if, the returning soldiers need them. So out of that collaboration started a care coordination program. So when that group of soldiers that deployed in 2004, 2005, started returning in roughly, February of 2005. Easter Seal stepped up, HHS stepped up, and I'm sure there were some other organizations as well to figure out, how we can best serve, these returning soldiers. So Easter Seals was actually given a contract by the New Hampshire Guard, and it was coordinated through the National Guard Bureau in Washington to provide these services. So that was in 2005. A couple of years into this program, and it was running great. And our soldiers were being taken care of. The care coordinators were there, counseling. Basically whatever was needed. Somebody somewhere said, well, geez, how did Easter Seals get this contract? It should have gone out for bid. And then, our senators were on board with this program. They thought it was great. They had firsthand knowledge. They were briefed on it. They saw the results. everybody supported it, but then basically the contract was taken away from Easter Seals, and it was given, it was put out to bid, and of course then you get into all the government requirements of veteran-owned, service disabled, minority owner, stuff like that, and Easter Seals lost they didn't lose the contract technically, they lost the ability to bid on the contract. Having said that, Easter Seals was so amped up on the great work that had been done so far that they wanted to continue. One of the very interested parties was a Vietnam veteran who was on the board of directors of Easter Seals, this gentleman named Mike Salter. He donated a large sum of money to Easter Seals and said, you know what, doesn't matter if we lost a contract, we need to keep this up. And and the contract that Easter Seals was working on was only post 9/11 returning service members. But then when you look at the Vietnam era veterans, Cold War veterans, Desert Storm vets, Korean, and even back to World War II. So Mike Salter gave this donation to Easter Seals and said, you know what, there's a large veteran population in New Hampshire. We can do much better. We can be more generous to those veterans because we know that there's people that are not being taken care of. Whether it's the VA or any other agency that was just not stepping up. So Veterans Count was formed, and we began servicing immediately. Veterans all the way back to World War II, and their families. So since then. And you guys jump in at any time because I'm going to keep on blabbering and throwing some statistics at you. But since then, over that 10-year period, to put it in perspective, so we have serviced over 5,300 service members, and that equates to over 10,000 total individuals between the service member and their families. Our care coordinators have intervened in 112 instances of significant suicide risk with either a service member or one of their family members. Homelessness has been prevented for over 1,200 at-risk families, and 974 homeless families, secured permanent housing. Over 2,300 individuals were successfully engaged in treatment for mental health or some kind of adjustment problem. Over 16,000 referrals were made to community and military resources, and that's the great thing about our care coordinators is that they cut through the red tape, whether it's the VA.
That's what I was going to ask is what about I'm sure there's veterans who have tried to go through other programs and run into a lot of that red tape.
Yep.
Now, is that something that you're able to kind of go around or help them with to get through, working with either other organizations like the VA and stuff like that, or
it's yes and probably another yes in there. So our care coordinators, they know how to get through the red tape because they've been doing it long enough. They're not new kids on the block. We've been dealing with again all of these state and sometimes federal agencies to cut through the red tape. And sometimes, we're a resource of last resort. A veteran and or their family has gone through, the process. They've gone through the gauntlet of, dealing with local agencies or the VA or the Department of Defense, for back pay issues or retirement issues or medical disability issues. And whether we cut through that red tape or, again, sometimes we have to deal directly with that service member or family member, and that gets into our last statistic is over that 10-year period that Veterans Count has been serving veterans. We've distributed over $3.3 million, and that's not government money. That's money that's been privately raised. $3.3 million distributed in emergency financial assistance. So what does that entail? No, we're not handing cash and putting it in veterans' hands, but we could be giving them food cards, gas cards. We could be making a direct payment for their mortgage or their rent or a car payment or a car repair.
Right.
a medical expense, all of those things where sometimes, veterans and their families get down and out, and all of a sudden they're stuck, and they just don't know where to turn. We become that, again, sometimes a resource of last resort where, and because we're less restrictive, and that's something I'll talk about, between a big V and a little V veteran. But we have less restrictions, so other agencies, especially government agencies, sometimes they're hamstrung, because they say, well, we can only deal with a veteran. Well, the definition of a veteran means that you have served on active duty, either on in the active duty military or on a deployment. So a guardsman or a reservist, who has, could have served their whole career in the Guard or Reserve, but if they haven't deployed, they're not considered a veteran. It doesn't matter if you gone to a tech school or an MOS, military occupational specialty school to get your training. That does not count. So it's a deployment, or active duty other than training. So we don't have those restrictions. Our definition of a veteran is anybody that signed a contract saying, yes, I'm going to serve my country, and I am willing to, give up to and including my life. It doesn't matter if they've only served for one day. If they signed on the dotted line, and then the next day they got into a car wreck and screwed up their leg or the knee or the back and couldn't continue their enlistment, we consider them a veteran, and we'll help those people out. It also, and I'll be transparent here. It does not depend on the type of discharge a veteran has gotten either. Especially post 9/11 veterans, and maybe
Meaning honorable or dishonorable or medical
or really when it comes down to discharge, you're talking about honorable or other than honorable.
Other than honorable.
You can get a general discharge, which just means it doesn't mean much of anything. It means you served your country and and you got out. But if it's an other than honorable, we're still willing to help those veterans. Because unfortunately, and this probably goes back to the Vietnam era, where PTSD really wasn't talked about, wasn't even thought of as an issue, that there's some soldiers even today, within the last 10 years have gotten bad conduct discharges because of mental health issues.
Right.
But now that, when they go through the VA process, they're finding, or any kind of mental health process, they're finding that this particular soldier has got PTSD. So, so that's why we look at we don't look at discharges. It's basically, if somebody is signed on the dotted line saying they're willing to serve their country, we're going to step up for them.
Okay. Damn. Yeah, I mean, it's a shame that they have to classify it that way. As you said, the big V and little V, and that just being other organizations and stuff. Now, excuse me, sorry.
I don't want to say I understand. Like, you're still sacrificing your time away from whatever there are responsibilities that you have to do as a little V. But say it's like a practice squad versus the starting squad. Like, you're not getting what a starting squad makes. You know what I mean? Like, if just NFL will go, because they're basically a recruiting for the military as it is.
I just find it hard to believe that we even classify it that way.
Well, it all comes down to benefits and money.
Yeah.
So the National Guard, there's some lobbying organizations out there that some I belong to, in the military, that they have been fighting for a while. And I mentioned Major General Clark. Now, here's a man who spent his entire military career in the Air National Guard. And I think when he retired, he had 40 or 41 years of service, all in the Air National Guard, no deployments per se.
Right.
And that man, after 40 years of service, is not considered a big V veteran.
I see. That seems like a complete injustice right there.
Exactly. And it's not like, a guardsman or a reservist has a choice. Well, technically, nowadays, you can volunteer for just about anything as an individual. But back in the day, not too long ago, you had to be called up as a unit or a part of a unit. You couldn't volunteer just, hey, I want to do this. I want to deploy. So it's not the fault of the part-time soldier, the guardsman, reservist. And again, when I'm generalizing, those terms. I should, have a disclaimer that when I say soldier, I'm talking about, Army, Air Force, Marine, Navy, and Coast Guard. But if a military member, has been in the reserves or National Guard, it is not their fault if they haven't been deployed.
Right.
But again, the Congress is always concerned about, well, there's going to be a cost associated. Well, no, because, we got some smarter people in Congress sometimes that, not all the time, but that realize that, hey, we just want that again, the Ken Clarks of the world, who haven't deployed, we want them to, because literally when people, if you're in a public forum and, a sporting event or something, say, well, anyone who's a veteran, stand up. It's like, oh, do I stand up? I'm not really a veteran. I've served my country for 30, 40, 20 years, even 10 years, doesn't matter. But I'm not a veteran because I didn't deploy, so should I stand up? I mean, as stupid as that sounds, that's really what the discussion's about. So, there are certain members of Congress, and I think it actually has passed that without any benefits attached to it, they want anyone who served served in the armed forces, full-time, part-time. Well, full-time, obviously, you're considered a veteran right away. To be considered a big V veteran. I mean, there should be no distinction, but.
Even the practice squad, when the Pats win, are going to get a ring. So
yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You should still get the benefits. You had to
you
throw
get
that in
ring.
there, didn't you?
Yeah, man.
Always the football analogy.
Always.
Well, that's why football was really created, right? College football was because of aggression. They want it was to train people how to have war when there was no time of war.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you can Google that.
I will Google that.
College football.
History of college football.
It has to do with the military. Who was the first ones?
Army and Navy, two of the oldest colleges in college football period. So that could be very true.
Oh, it's true, man. It's true.
I believe you.
You could just
how dare I doubt it?
It's true. You look it up.
Well, yeah, we have a Google game.
That's why I need my sound guy to Google it and throw it up, because it is a true thing. Like I have looked it up. I don't want to misquote how it actually goes, but I want to say it was Harvard and Yale started first, but that it was about, and that's the military uses the NFL's recruitment. That's why you have Navy and Army and all them.
Makes sense.
Interesting.
I can't argue that.
But I still think it's fucked up that the military pays the NFL for the advertising instead of the other way around. Like you know what I mean?
Right.
Like it.
Yeah.
When you're making billions and billions, you should be.
Oh yeah, when you're making hand over fist,
dishing out some shit as opposed to be like, oh, you want to put your sign up? Well, yeah, we'll stand for the flag, but you gotta pay me, and then I'll tell them, like, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, it is interesting that and I'm assuming it's that way in all sports. I could be wrong, but I and again, I know the NFL does just charge the military because I've been involved. Well, not directly involved, but when I was still working full time in the Guard, every once in a while we'd say, oh, the Patriots are giving tickets, and so basically soldiers, and airmen would go out there and hold the flag. The big ass flag, that's strewn across the field, holding it, and the military actually, Army or Air Force, whatever the case may be, DOD actually paid to get that done.
Yeah,
I never knew that. I was like, really? I said, I thought they were just throwing it out there and saying, hey, why don't you come do that? I was like, yeah, interesting.
Any volunteers?
But it's ridiculous that we pay for that. It's like, wait. So part of your military budget is to pay the NFL? I'm pretty sure they make enough money without us paying them.
Yeah, if anything, the NFL should be donating to veteran organizations and.
Well, don't get me started.
Put a little more focus on that.
Don't get me started on the whole NFL protest anthem thing.
Oh no! I gotta move past that thing. Yeah. I listened to it for too long.
Yeah.
I listen to a lot of sports
there's
talk
still
radio.
people that talk about it, and I get it. It's a very not taboo thing to talk about, because people get heated up real quick, and you've had people on both sides, ones that served, one that haven't served, that have come out on both sides, but it's never looking at the problem of where it started, more just the stage that it's on.
Yeah.
So
well, it's interesting. I don't know if you guys heard that I just saw somebody sent me an email because I actually was a member of this organization after I got out of the service, called AMVETS, AMVETS, AMVETS. So the NFL actually had approached them and say, hey, we've got, at first I thought it was, they're talking to them about actually doing a commercial, but they're actually talking about an ad in the Super Bowl program. And so AMVETS, came up with this ad, and it basically just showed a retired service member, AMVETS, which is, I shouldn't say it's kind of like the American Legion, but they do some of the same functions. But anyway, all it said was, please stand for the anthem. That's all it said, and maybe some information about AMVETS. So they sent it to the NFL. NFL rejects it, saying, no, that's too political.
Yeah.
But who jumped on it and said, we'll run it in our programs? NASCAR, the NHL, and the NBA.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I mean, the NHL, that's mostly Canadians anyway, so and Russians. I mean, there's a lot of Americans in there, but there's a lot of Canadians and Russians in the NHL. So
yeah, politics should stay out of sports altogether.
Yeah.
As far
well, I mean, it's kind of hard when I mean, I get that he took a stance, and I do realize the initial stance that he took it for. But when you jump on probably the largest soapbox in the area, I mean, it's going to get attention and you're going to rile people up. And that's why he jumped on that soapbox. Like, this is my platform, and it's the biggest platform around. So
that got so swept over after Goodell came out, or no, Trump came out and said what he said. And then the league was like, well, you're not going to tell me what to do. And then it just became about that. And it's like,
it's a
all right, well, you
contest.
Yeah, basically, and it's like, all right, well, you forgot the whole point of why it started in the beginning. So now it's about this, and then some people have boycotted the NFL. It obviously hasn't done much.
And for all those people who said that they would boycott the NFL, I haven't met one single person or know one single person who has stopped watching football this year. Until the season starts, it's all great to make your stance, but
I actually do know a couple people that
stopped watching completely.
Yeah, they stopped watching completely. Have not watched a single game, and and honestly, I was one of those people that my interest basically dropped to zero, even with the Patriots, our beloved Patriots. I was like, I could, it just did not interest me. And if I had something else to do, if it was a nice sunny weekend, and I was still riding my motorcycle, I would be out on the bike, and didn't really bother me. And I've kind of come around. And the sad thing is that I'm sure you guys have noticed that they don't even show the anthem during the pregame. I mean, leading up to. I mean, they don't even show it anymore. So, and then sometimes you see clips after the fact saying, "Oh, this individual stood, sat, whatever, kneeled, laid, rolled over, played dead." Or a group of players did, but they don't even show it anymore.
Well, that's been a complaint of mine for a while with the NFL. I mean, even before the Kaepernick thing, they stopped showing on a weekly basis the anthem. NASCAR shows it every week. Every time they have a race, they show it. IndyCar does it. NHL does it. They'll do both, depending on where they're playing. So, and then the NFL kind of stopped doing it, and then that whole thing happened again. They started putting a little bit more light on who was doing what during the anthem, and not the anthem itself. Not the anthem itself. Yep. So, and I mean, it's a shame that I don't even think baseball really shows it every game. They show it in big games.
Right.
And same as the NFL. You'll see it in the championship games when they have less games to cram into your Sunday.
Yep.
And, a little bit more time to show it. But for the most part, I think it went away up until that Kaepernick thing.
Well, I mean, the players weren't even on the field up until 2009.
Right.
And I think that's pretty much around the time when the military started paying for, giving you money so you go out there and show your support. So it's
I appreciate
business.
that about the NHL.
It's a shady. I think it was 2015. They were a non-profit.
Yeah,
until
like
2015.
That's crazy.
How are you a non-profit?
That's
until
crazy.
2015.
The NFL?
Yeah.
NFL was a non-profit organization. Yeah. Get the fuck out of here. You're making billions, dude, and I'm a non-profit.
And plus they've got all the the taxpayer-funded stadiums. They get these new stadiums built, and that's crazy.
It's bullshit.
Nice racket if you can get into it, I guess.
Your beer's coming in nice.
It's good there.
All right, moving on.
Come on, Billy. We won't pick on you.
No, it's okay. I know it's not really there.
I get this a lot of surprises, like when going in and seeing different people. They'll look at me like, "Damn, shit, come in fast." Yeah, man, I'm a chia pet. I don't know what happens. Like it doesn't grow up top. It's gonna come out somewhere.
It's all
pretty much
migrated.
my back and my face. So
Yeah. I've run into people, they saw me, knew me with my beard, saw me recently, without it, and I may not have had a chance, to tell them, oh, by the way, I shaved it off for a fundraiser. So unfortunately, I was at a wake and a funeral, and a lot of people saw me, and they're like, "Oh, you shaved your beard." I was like, "That's not why I shaved my beard."
Yeah.
And now they see. I just saw this woman today, as an old friend of mine, and she's like, "You're growing your beard back." I was like, "Yes, I am. And here's the reasons why."
That was the whole plan to start.
Yeah. So it's all good.
I think I always hated like that. I mean, this part's a little bit better, but there was like a in between this and just like the shadow when it just looks like you're being lazy. You know what I mean? Like it just looks like you just didn't shave that day because you're lazy, not because you're trying to grow it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of like that.
Yeah, kind of like this. I'm telling you, man, these vitamins.
I get why people are apprehensive. You better inject those things instead of
it's not working.
Inject them in your face.
I thought I was being smart because I started taking them like 2 weeks before we shaved. I'm like, who knows how long this shit's gonna take to activate my system.
I don't know when it's gonna acclimate to my pH
so
balance.
For the first 2 weeks before we shaved, I started taking them, and I thought I was only supposed to take 1 pill a day, while I was supposed to be taking 3 pills a day.
Oh, no wonder.
For it to take effect, it takes like 2 weeks for it to start, showing some.
Now like 6.
Nah, 3 a day. But I didn't realize it until like 3 or 4 days after we had shaved. So that whole 2-week jumpstart that I thought I was being smart about,
Bummer,
didn't help.
I was more surprised, not surprised, but kind of surprised about what you were saying. When we had talked previously about the percentage of enlistments that you're getting now into active military, and
it's they've gone way down.
But yet their budget is so high.
Well, it is. It's and there's definitely different arguments on is it the cost of personnel, or is it the cost of the equipment? And of course, when you have the new stealth strike fighter that keeps on going up in price every single time. I get that we need to stay ahead of our adversaries, at least on, hopefully superior to and not just equal to when it comes to equipment. But again, there's a cost of doing business. There's a cost of, protecting the country 24/7, 365.
Protecting the world, really.
Exactly. We're obviously involved in a lot of different areas, and you're right. The allies that depend on us, need our protection. Maybe more than we do sometimes, obviously. And but yeah, the personnel costs. I don't know if they keep going up. They probably do. I don't think nowhere near as fast as the equipment. And then when I say equipment, I'm talking about, large scale, ships and planes and tanks and helicopters and things like that. Not that it's chump change, but of course, the new, pistol, that 6 Hour got the contract for. Obviously,
right.
that costs something too. Everything costs. On the personnel side, it's not just, with any government agency, DOD is a government agency. You've got the current cost of the people currently serving now, both active duty and in the Guard and Reserves, and then you got the retiree portion. You got soldiers that are disabled. So you've got the healthcare costs and you add it all up, and it's expensive. I don't understand when certain people out there, whether they're in Congress or not, start talking about, the cost for our military is out of control, and we spend more than, and they list off,
next
30 countries, and it's like, yeah, but they don't do what we do, they don't protect what we protect, and we still overall, and I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but the amount that we spend on defense is still a small amount in comparison to, other government programs. I mean, it is large, guaranteed that, but again, I think it still comes down to you have to, there's a balance between what you're willing to spend, and what you're expecting your military to do. And if you, say they're going to do X, Y, and Z, then you got to fund them to do that. And if you don't fund them, then they're not, they may only be able to do X and Y, or Y and Z. But, but I'm kind of skirting one of the original statement you made or question. But the actual percentage of enlistable soldiers is incredibly small right now. And whether it's due to mental health issues, lack of education, even a GED.
Now, for people who don't know, the basic requirements to enlist are fairly minimal, right? Aside from a physical requirements, you need a GED or a high school diploma, and basically clearance from a doctor, right?
Pretty much. That's really it. So you'd think that it'd be fairly simple, so you look at, the population out there and say, well, there's quite a few, men and women that should be able to enlist. Excuse me. Unfortunately, that's not the case. I think it's either 6 out of 10, or it could even be as high as 8 out of 10 men and women between the ages of 18 and could be 25, but I'll say even 18 to 21 are not eligible for some reason, because they've expressed that they have some kind of mental health disorder, or they're on anti-anxiety medication, they don't have a GED, or it could be that they have some kind of drug conviction, and certain drug convictions can or offenses can be waived, and the Army is always going back and forth about what they're going to do, and sometimes it comes down to, well, we'll allow a certain percentage, of marijuana possessions, that will go out the window and say, yeah, you can still enlist, but so they go back and forth in that, based on, the numbers game they have to play with enlistments. But the bottom line is Joe, to your point, there's, it's either between 60 and 80% of the eligible population between 18 and, again, could be 25, are not able to enlist because of some factor.
I mean, with all the marijuana laws passing in states, you would think with those kind of convictions, you could scrub those easily and kind of give yourself a bigger pool. But
the issue is that you're right. The states have passed certain laws, but the
federal government doesn't recognize it.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's one of the things they're dealing with. But again, I mean, I think that they're going to wind up, the DOD overall is going to have to really look at possibly waiving, some of these offenses, just for that reason, because, if the state passes it and makes it legal, then, the recruiting pool just keeps on getting smaller and smaller.
Right. Do you think any of it has to do with the younger generation's ideology on the way they see the world?
Probably.
I mean,
I would say so.
Their view on military and government as it is, especially in these times. I mean, there's a lot of young people out there. I mean, I know we like to make fun of the millennials and all that because they eat Tide Pods and shit like that. But
adults eat Tide Pod too, bro.
I understand adults do that.
You can't just blame kids, man. You look at the adults. Adults, right? I can understand. I don't understand a kid eating a Tide Pod, but at the same time, I don't even further understand an adult.
But I consider an adult 18. So these eligible age people who are eating Tide Pods.
Wait, I just heard something that somebody in Congress wanted to change the definition of adulthood to age 25.
That's
some
what they
bullshit
say
right there.
It's not though, because that's what they say when your frontal cortex fully develops is 25. So that's why, even though technically by law you're an adult at 18 because you can vote, at 21 you can drink. It's really just made up bullshit.
I'd say 20 is a good age. I mean,
wow, when did you grow the fuck up? I didn't grow the fuck up until I was 34, 35. You know what I mean?
But the people I know who went straight into the military after high school, they grew up a lot
Right,
faster
no,
than I did.
oh, yeah.
So
Well, see, and
I mean,
that's
guaranteed.
kind of why I still feel that even though I didn't serve, that I think it should be a 2-year mandatory service like Israel has, like UK have, like you
is it
should.
Switzerland, Sweden, one of those two.
I know
Switzerland.
you want.
Switzerland actually it's more than 2 years. It's like to age 50.
Damn.
You know,
It's like a lifelong commitment.
But I
Yeah.
mean,
but they don't
whoever,
get in a lot
whoever
of wars.
fucking,
Yeah.
Correct.
they're a neutral country. I mean, which if that's how they justify, see, I could see that because that's how they can justify your universal Medicare that they take care of, like
exactly.
you know what I mean?
Medicaid.
Yep.
Medicare,
Medicare.
Medic.
You had me.
Maybe
medic
sometimes
stuff.
it's medical.
This is only 6.5, huh?
Yeah.
But I think a lot of it because I know when I was of age to enlist, I was angry. Just my upbringing, I came from a broken home. It was a shitty time. I was mad at the world. And then you look at kind of like how it is today. I see how other people were treated by our government and go, fuck that. Why am I going to go do that? Like, look at all the bad that they've done. Granted, now as an adult, you start to look back and might not agree with it, but you can understand, and some of it has been for the greater good, if you will. But a lot of lies are still there, as far as like false flags to get into war for the the Gulf of Tonkin. What was the? There was another one I heard today to go into war with Cuba. They were gonna fly a drone commercial jet and shoot it down and say that Cuba did it so that we would go. That's not paperclip. I wish I wrote it down, then I would have remembered. But there have been those instances where we have been lied to.
Well, that's what I mean
to
by
start
the
shit.
shift
So
in
it's-
ideology for this generation. You know, they're the things that they're protesting and the things that they're against with government right now, and they're trying to get changed. I was just curious if that might have a bigger effect on than maybe we're seeing.
Well, I think the current state of politics absolutely does with young people. But I mean, you could go back to probably the last 10 to 15 years. I mean, luckily there has been still a strong propensity to join some branch of service throughout every generation. Is that propensity strong right now? I would say no. But like the three of us were talking, earlier, and I agree with Joe. I think there should be an automatic requirement, for everybody to come out of high school or age 18,
Right.
when 17 or 18, when based on your birthday, when you should have graduated high school, that you enlist and do something. It could be it could be the Peace Corps. It doesn't have to be military, but you enlist and you do something. For 2 years, get smart on what the world's really like, and not just, look at your Facebook page and say, well, geez, that's got to be true because it's on the computer. It's on my Facebook, link.
Right.
Get out there and do something, whether it's military service or, whether it's, even getting back to the 30s and the Depression and Civilian Conservation Corps,
Right.
putting people to work. Doing something. It's like, you serve your country, for a couple of years, then you make your own opinions. But, too many people today are whether it's, right, left, or moderate, they're too quick to assume, that whatever they think is the way it is.
Right.
And I think that, again, in the military, you'll learn very quickly that, there are things, outside of our control that, again, and that's why we have the separation of, we have civilian leadership, over our military services. And, I mean, you can hark back to, the days of Vietnam where, soldiers were mistreated when they came back. It's like, hey, because they volunteered, to serve their country, you got to hold your civilian leadership accountable,
Right.
when they put us, or the military, in a situation where maybe it's not a just cause. But for people of any generation, but especially today, to accept, or just automatically protest what they don't agree with, number one.
Right. Especially when a lot of these young college kids haven't really lived life. Because I 100% agree. 2 years, mandatory. It should be. You're going to learn a lot more about how life is in that 2 years doing something with structure, discipline, a purpose than you would have learned in the 12 years of your cookie cutter like education through the system. I mean, so yeah, I 100% agree that everybody should have to do something. I mean, there's plenty of programs out there too.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing, getting back to the whole numbers game with the military is that, potentially, I mean, it could get to the point based on, people not being able to enlist because they don't meet the minimum qualifications, is that, maybe the draft would have to come back. That would raise up a whole lot of flags with a lot of people, but the bottom, and again, and it's
shit, you thought the Kaepernick thing was crazy.
Yeah, well, and it still gets into the discussion between, okay, well, how big does our military need to be? What are we going to do with them? But
plenty of shit.
Yeah, it's and hopefully it would never come to a draft, and the people in from the Vietnam era, good, bad, or indifferent. I mean, there was obviously people that got drafted, that performed heroically or just performed and did their job. That wasn't always the case. I mean, do you want to have somebody beside you that was forced to join? When you enlisted, and somebody else, got forced to join, and you're sharing a foxhole, it gives you a different perspective. So, I don't know if a draft would ever come about, but I mean, if it was mandatory government service, and then again, it would still come down to a numbers game because so many people would have to be funneled to the military, and but again, the population, the percentage, I think would work out better if we had something like that, because then you wouldn't have to worry about those that don't meet the minimum standards because that want to join basically. And
right.
Maybe I didn't clarify that. It was that those that are trying to join, most of them cannot.
Right. So, well, then I mean, it seems like pretty basic, requirements to join. The fact that I get the fact that the like anxiety medication, ADD
no, that's not even
medication.
where I was gonna go. When I was 30, I think 34 is the age limit for the reserves.
It's either 34 or 35. I'm not sure.
Which you exceed both of those.
Well, now yes, but when I was 32, 31, 32, I attempted to join the Air Force Reserve. I had a GED, so to take the test, I would have had to score a higher point as opposed to getting the diploma, which that part I wasn't worried about. The issue was, for my height, I had to make a certain weight requirement. And I looked at, well, isn't that what basic training is supposed to do? Like, are you supposed to whoop me into shape?
No, it's not a weight loss program, damn it. This ain't Weight Watchers to put your big ass into shape.
What was John Candy and Stripes? Yeah. Oh, this is a great weight loss program for me.
Yeah.
But so something like that. But because I had gone to the gym, my BMI, I'm obese. I mean, now I'm fat because I drink beer. But like going towards the gym, like I had just put on like probably close to 15 pounds of muscle from going to the gym. It's like, well, you got to get to 165. I'm not gonna be able to cut to 165, man. Like it's not.
Right.
That's my high school weight.
Yeah, it's not a feasible thing for me, but. Some of the weight requirements should probably.
Well, it's interesting. So I'll give you a little insight here on, once you're in the military, there are height, weight requirements, and it's based on male or female, and it's based on your age. So of course, science says that the theory basically is as you get older, you're going to put on weight. And so the military, gives you a couple pounds, and and the age groups are like every 4 years, 17 to 21, 21 to 25, or 22 to 26, something like that, up through, age 60. 60 usually is, the max retirement age. So you have height weight requirements, and you also have physical fitness requirements. In the Army, you have to do, and I don't know if they've changed the standards yet, but it's been this way for a long time, and they've been talking forever about changing what the exercises are. But you have to do a 2-mile run, followed by 2 minutes of push-ups, 2 minutes of sit-ups, followed by a 2-mile run. And of course, again, scores are based on gender and age as well. Well, if you get in the reserves, reserve or National Guard, if you get a deployment order, all that stuff goes out the window. You could be 50 pounds overweight. You might not have passed a PT test in 3 years, which again, so the argument would be, well, wait a minute, how come they haven't been thrown out yet? Well, and I don't want to get into the details about the weight loss program and the time it takes to do it and et cetera,
Right.
et cetera. But bottom line is you can be overweight and not be physically fit if you're once you're in the service, and then if you get a deployment order, guess what? All that stuff goes out the window and you're going to deploy.
Right.
So another part of that fitness spectrum and weight spectrum is there was a guy who was in one of my units, and he was a heavy guy, but he could run like crazy, and he was technically obese by the Army standard, and overweight, but he could max his physical fitness test, like crazy, and it would drive me crazy because I'm a guy who's relatively thin, but I've always had to work out and maintain, and not that this guy didn't work out, but he's carrying 30, 40 extra pounds, and he's whooping my butt on all 3 events, so. But then the Army wants to put him out because, well, you're overweight. It's like, I just maxed my PT test. How many people max that?
Right.
Not many. So
It's crazy.
it is.
Take a break there.
Sounds
Get a
good.
beer. Take a pee.
Sounds like a plan.
That third person that's eluding me so far, but eventually. So I mean, I'm very excited to work with you guys for this beard competition, and I hope that it's enough that, I mean, obviously, like I said when we had talked before, that when I was at the board meeting, we had the numbers, and even though they're a little construed, like you said, I do want to beat some of those numbers. So as long as I beat that, it's just more like, yes, that's right.
It's all about a little bit of competition,
little.
beyond the competition.
Well, and again, so I know we started off, and then we talked a lot about a lot about a lot of things, but Veterans Count, we're the fundraising arm of the, and actually I don't know if I even mentioned the technical program that falls under Easter Seals. It's called Military and Veteran Services, or M&VS. So Veterans Count is the fundraising arm. M&VS alone, they do apply for grants, and they've gotten grants, state grants, federal grants. But what we've done, I mean, as far as we know, Veterans Count may not be the only one now, but it's definitely, I think, one of the first, if not the first, public-private partnerships, because we've got the M&VS, that falls directly under Easter Seals, working with organizations to get grants, again, whether state or federal, and then we work with companies and individual donors. There's a lot of banks throughout the state that are huge supporters of Veterans Count. I apologize. I probably should have had a list of some of the donors, but People's United Bank, Service Credit Union is huge, Eastern Bank, and again, some of these donations may be funneled to or through Easter Seals. Easter Seals just did a major capital campaign because they rehabbed their building. I mean, they were living in a 1930s, 40s building, in Manchester, and they just did a beautiful rehab of that building. But a lot of these companies, banks or otherwise, have donated both the Easter Seals and to Veterans Count. Auto Fair, Manchester Harley Davidson, and I'm just talking about ones off the top of my head from Manchester. The Manchester chapter supporters, and of course, again, we have 4 of the chapters. Manchester, 4 chapters total. Excuse me. Manchester, Nashua, the Seacoast, and the Lakes region. So each of our chapters, do our own independent fundraising. and some of the chapters, Nashua and Seacoast, have put on these huge gala dinners, bringing in some incredible money, which has been great. The problem is, we're hoping that our donors don't become fatigued, because again, we're not the only organization out there asking for funds on a regular basis, either an annual giving kind of thing, or by event. But each of the chapters, we do our own fundraising, do our own events. And again, like this beard competition, something falls in our lap like this. I mean, we thought it was a great idea, relatively easy lift for us. And again, we may not be talking, huge money, but that's okay. If it increases awareness of what we're doing, what our programs do, that's definitely worth, whatever we raise. And if we didn't raise a dime, just getting the awareness out there is huge too. Because maybe the next time they hear Veterans Count, they'll be like, "Oh, yeah, I know what those guys do. Good organization."
Now, Easter Seals is nationwide?
Easter Seals is nationwide.
So
Veterans Count is not.
Okay.
We're actually in, I think, like 7 states. Maine, New Hampshire. It started here in New Hampshire, but New Hampshire, Maine, Vermont, New York, I think either Rhode Island or Connecticut. I don't think we're in both of them. And North Carolina and Kansas. Easter Seals is trying to make this a national program because they've seen the success we've had. And of course, we've got throughout the country, we have a huge veteran population. Per capita, New Hampshire is, I can't remember if we're in the top 5 or top 10 of veteran populations.
Really?
Are we in a boom?
Oh.
A boom of veterans? I know.
Well, definitely because of 9/11.
You're right.
Yeah.
I mean, I know there were a lot of people, and for good reason, joined the military because they were angry.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It seemed like we had that boom. I know you had mentioned earlier we've had a decrease in enlistment, over the last couple of years, but we had a boom then.
Yep.
So has that carried through in kind of waves for veterans?
You're right. The number of veterans have increased, and unfortunately, based on the type of injuries that have occurred in Iraq and Afghanistan, the amount of care for a lot of veterans, has increased. The cost of that care has increased. Whether it's PTS, I guess technically they've dropped the D. They're not calling it a disorder, but post-traumatic stress. But PTS has gone up. TBI, traumatic brain injury.
Right.
With all the IEDs, and you can look at it a couple of ways, and I won't mention names, but I'll give you a particular example of some of the things that happen out there. Not to me personally, I deployed to Iraq, but it was one of the safest deployments we could have had. And again, luck of the draw. You don't know where you're going to be.
Right.
You stick us in the middle of the desert. We're doing certain things.
They tell you get on a plane at a certain time, and where you land is where you're going to be for a while.
Well, exactly. You don't get to pick and choose. The type of mission you do and where you do it. But based on advances of battlefield medicine, and having excellent medevac capability in the 2 theaters, and but just the amount of training that our medics go through, and they also have in the Army anyway a position called combat lifesaver. It's basically in addition to what your normal military job is. So you could be an infantryman, but you could also be trained as a combat lifesaver. So you go through special training, that's got to be recertified. I don't know I can't remember if it's annually or not, but just to have basically an extra medic or 2 or 5 or 10 in your unit that have gone through that training has increased survivability rates incredibly. But sometimes with really horrific injuries. There was a New Hampshire soldier that was involved with an IED blast in a Humvee. And again, I'm not going to mention the individual's name, but he survived, but he's got a traumatic brain injury. I mean, I know the poor guy's, making progress, but, this happened early on in like 2006 or 7. And, you know, it's probably a shame that he survived, honestly,
Yeah.
based on what he and his family have gone through. And, but he survived based on, that medic or combat lifesaver, did what he or she was supposed to do and,
Right.
and saved his life. And, so, so the veteran population has increased, again, and so getting back to the big V, little v discussion earlier, primarily because all of the guardsmen and reservists that have deployed. So now they are veterans because they've deployed to a combat theater. So yes, the veteran population has probably astronomically increased. The VA definitely was not ready to handle the influx.
Right.
And hence we saw some of the issues across the country in some of the VA centers. So it's great that we have an organization like Veterans Count, like Easter Seals, and their Military and Veteran Services program that can provide the care. Again, we're not talking medical care, but we're talking counseling, or even again, cutting through the red tape. So instead of the 80-day wait at a particular VA, we get some kind of either a medical appointment or a counseling appointment with a mental health provider much sooner, or maybe we even pay for it.
Right.
Again, based on the need of the soldier, how critical it is, the wait time that the soldier may have with the VA or another organization, and we again, our care coordinators have done God's work, literally, and saved lives. I mean, again, I mentioned before about the number of potential suicides that our care coordinators have intervened, on with a soldier, and honestly saved lives. And we've had care coordinators go to a soldier's house, and I say soldier, I mean former soldier,
Right.
because we were given the soldier's name, and tried to make contact, called the soldier on the phone, wouldn't answer the phone. And I think it was a family member, had told our our care coordinators, we're really worried about, Bill, whatever his name is, and this care coordinator literally, knocked on this guy's front, went to his door, knocked on his door, talked to him through the door. That soldier still wouldn't come out. So the guy, the care coordinator, went back to his car, and he sat there for like 3 days until the soldier came out. And the soldier's finally like, well, I guess you aren't going away. And then the guy's like, no, I'm not. I want, we need to talk. And,
Right.
And started the process and started the healing process. Whatever that soldier was going through, he didn't think that, either that he needed help, or he didn't think that there was anyone to help him.
Right.
And our care coordinator got through, and we've got plenty of stories. We mentioned in one of our earlier discussions about, having, potentially one of our clients come in, or having one of our care coordinators come in just so he or she can relate a client story. And I mean, it's unbelievable. And we don't, sometimes wrongly, I think, because some of our volunteers, maybe don't, I mean, we talk about it a lot, but when you see it firsthand, when you hear it firsthand about, some of our clients and their families and what they've gone through and what we've helped them to achieve, it's like, oh yeah, that's why I'm doing this. That's why I'm raising that money. That's why, we're charging, $40 to sit at a dinner, or 10 or $100 to sit at a breakfast, whatever the case may be. It's all going, and one thing I didn't mention, and sometimes comes up with nonprofits, is 90 cents on every dollar we raise goes directly to that veteran, to supporting a veteran or their family.
That's awesome. That's a good amount.
Yeah, it's. I think it's critical when you look at where your donated dollars are going. Because there are a lot of organizations out there, whether they're associated with military or not, or veterans or not, that have a huge overhead. We do not.
Right.
The care coordinators are paid, either they're employees and or contractors of Easter Seals. So like money we raise do not go to the care coordinators to pay them. I mean, they're already paid. So again, that's why, we have very little administrative overhead. And again, as I mentioned before, I mean, we never put cash directly into a veteran's or a soldier's hands or their family's hands. I mean, we're, issuing, food cards, gas cards, or we're paying a bill directly to whatever, whoever needs to get taken care of, whether it's the, a mortgage company, whether it's the landlord, a car repair place, or a medical bill, whatever the case may be. I mean, we're paying those bills directly, and again, sometimes, we have a leg up, we think, because of not having the restrictions that other organizations do, because of the big V, little v thing discussion. So and luckily, a lot of the organizations in New Hampshire that that we've been dealing with, and they've been dealing with us, they know who to reach out to. They know that we can get things done, because sometimes their hands are tied, and they want to do a good job. What organization X, Y, or Z. But sometimes, based on their rules, they can't. But they know to turn to us, and we can usually get the job done, or find some way to make whatever needs to happen.
I mean, I know. See, that's the part that's kind of shameful is the fact. I mean, no, there's been more awareness over the last couple of years about, pushing for these type of organizations for veterans, and the awareness of what these men and women go through when they come home. It just seems a
should
shame
already
that
be
it's
aware. I mean,
right. It
what
just
happened
seems,
to the Vietnam vets, like when we were talking with Troy and
right. And once that started to all go away, I think we got to a point where, and that leads me back to the boom in the veterans. I mean, we've talked about this before. Is I think all of us know somebody who's either served or is a veteran, or
I'm pretty sure everybody knows somebody.
not all
How do you
people.
not know somebody?
I'm just saying,
Well,
for the most
you'd
part,
be surprised. You'd be
yeah,
surprised.
for the most part,
Wow.
we somebody knows somebody who is close to them, and it just seems like the things that they have to deal with when they come back. And over the last couple of years, like I said, there seems to be a little bit more for a push for awareness and that's one of the main reasons we wanted to do this with you guys, is just to put the information out there that there are places that they can go where they don't have to deal with all the red tape and stuff. There are people to help you with that. So
yep, absolutely. And one thing I've been a little lax on, and I'll throw out some more. Well, they can always go to easterseals.com/New Hampshire. Of course, that's Easter Seals overall. And that should connect anyone with military and veteran services. But Vets Count, we have our own website as well. Again, part of the Easter Seals website. But it's vetscount.org. And then you can go /New Hampshire, or just go to vetscount.org. And then up at the top, there'll be the different states that Vets Count is a part of. And you can click on New Hampshire. And that'll take you to the different chapters, the events that are upcoming. But the Easter Seals website, easterseals.com/New Hampshire, can definitely put folks in touch with one of our care coordinators, one of our military and veteran services. And dang it, I know her name has changed, but it used to be Pitt. But Kristen Pitt was one of the lead care coordinators. She may still get this email, but I'll give it to you here. It's cpitt, Pitt, at eastersealsnewhampshire.org. First name is Kristen, but it's C. Pitt. But she's one of our lead care coordinators. I think she's our intake care coordinator. So she's like the first stop for any veteran or their family that are looking for help. They go through Kristen, and then she figures out what their needs are, and we take it from there. One of the things that military and veteran services has made it clear to us is that the program is anonymous. If both of you guys are veterans, and one of you approached me and said, hey Jim, I can really use some help, I give your name to the care coordinator, and that's the end of my involvement. I can question them till the cows come home. Hey, did Bill reach out to you? Can't really say,
Right.
So it's totally anonymous, unless the service member doesn't want to make it anonymous. And luckily, again, some of our clients, are more than willing to tell their story. And some of them are just gut wrenching on what some of these soldiers and their families went through. But yeah, it can be frustrating for us sometimes because we'd like to hear about the good things that are done and want to make sure that hey, I passed you a name. Did you reach out to Bill, Jane, whatever. And they really can't tell us. They're like, yeah, we got the name. Thank you very much, and
Yeah.
So it's totally anonymous. Again, unless the service member, or the former service member, wants to make things public. And again, luckily, there are some that want to tell their story because they realize that they got a second chance, maybe on life, based on where they were with themselves or their families, and until Veterans Count or Military and Veteran Services intervened. So, it's all about awareness and making sure that our veterans are taken care of. There's a famous quote, and I'm going to butcher the hell out of it, and one of you guys may even know it off the top of your head, but
I doubt it. We butcher stuff weekly.
Yeah, well, I'll butcher
Shit,
this.
I do it daily. I ain't gonna lie.
But something basically about the propensity of someone to join the military is in direct proportion to how previous generations have been taken care of. So you asked me about why aren't people joining? It's like, well, if they hear and see the troubles and the scandals at the VA, for instance,
Right.
it's like, well, crap, why would I join if I'm going to come home all messed up and not being taken care of? Why would I want that?
Right.
So it's so hopefully we're a part of that healing process. And again, and I'll say again, so I'm talking from a New Hampshire perspective. Overall, I think the Manchester VA has done an exceptional job. Yes, they've had their issues. They have a new director, and I don't know if he's still considered an interim director or not, but Alex Montoya, who's really making changes and making things happen. But it still comes down to overall, how is, and it's not just the medical piece. It's again, getting back to the Vietnam vets, being spit on, when they get back off the plane, in uniform. And being called baby killers and stuff like that.
I still have trouble, even when I see that in movies, read it.
Oh my
stuff,
God, yeah.
I still have trouble with that how they could be treated that way.
Yeah, and again, but to me, it's lack of intellect on the spittees part, because they're like, again, civilian leadership, has nothing to do with military action. But again, it never should have happened. It did, and actually it's been 2017 was the 50th anniversary of the Vietnam War, and I think just about at every Veterans Count event we had in 2017, we actually had a Vietnam veteran recognition pinning ceremony.
Oh, nice.
We tried to identify or get Vietnam vets to attend a certain event, but even if we didn't know they were there, we recognized everybody, brought them up, had them, state their name, where they served, branch of service, years of service, gave them a, commemorative pin, and honestly, I'm sure for some of these individuals, it was probably the first time they'd ever been thanked and recognized. So it's an ongoing process with that generation of veterans, and we still have work to do there. But whether they're currently serving or have served, post 9/11, no one's got a crystal ball on knowing what's going to happen over the next few years and where the next big conflict is going to be. But we have plenty of adversaries out there, and we will always need a military, and we need to take care of them. We need to take care of their families while the soldiers are gone, and we need to definitely take care of them when they get back. So that's part of what we do. Again,
Is the VA completely government funded?
yes.
I don't know if this is true or not, but was it affected during the 3 days that they shut down? Did they have headaches to deal with, or did you have headaches to deal with because of it?
Me personally, no. That's one. Well, they're critical services that always remain on, and it's up to each organization to determine their level of staffing, based on the services. Like the Manchester VA is not a full service hospital, but they do have service members that stay there. It's kind of like they have, I don't know how many beds they have. It's not a large number. I want to say it's less than 50. It could be less than 30 beds for veterans, that are in various stages of recovery. Could there have been issues? Maybe. I mean, there may have been some. Hate to say anything that happens at the VA is non-essential, but there could have, probably were some personnel that were deemed, not critical to the day-to-day operation.
Cutbacks a little bit for it,
right?
yeah.
And as long as a veteran wasn't medically affected, directly,
right?
But yeah, I mean, any kind of government shutdown,
I mean, I know that's a little bit further down the line,
Yeah.
but just out of curiosity, if it was something that would have been affected had it last longer, if it happens again.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, we're talking about 15 days.
Yeah.
15 days. I know, but
They only kick the can down the road for 2 weeks.
Yeah,
I mean, I know we don't have time to get into that injustice too, but the whole that fucking pisses me off because I did not know that because we've had government shutdowns before. Like it threatens probably every other administration. Something comes up where they just can't agree. It doesn't always happen, but
No, shit shouldn't be held hostage.
I had never realized that military didn't get paid when the shutdown happens.
Yep.
Their benefits are put on suspension,
right?
And
Yeah,
I believe that includes medical. I mean,
but you can get
basic medical.
Well, no,
right?
but they not all of them all the time, depending on what it is. But they do get that back pay after.
No,
the
I
fact.
know they get
But
it. It's a
Right.
portion.
If it's for a long time, then you're
exactly.
waiting for a check. Like shit, I got rent to pay or mortgage or
Absolutely.
food to buy.
I'm an Army retiree, so my pension was affected. I mean, technically,
that
probably
was my next question.
Well, probably not because I don't even I get paid. I think at the either 15th to the 30th, probably the end of the month is when my pay gets deposited. But it's like, okay, I was an officer. I don't depend on that check. There's a lot of soldiers, and retirees that do depend on it. Number one, currently serving.
Does it work the same way with pension?
Absolutely.
Is that it's apportioned until
Yep.
the shutdown is ended, and then you get all that in however they pay it?
Yeah, basically kind of hold it in abeyance. It's not, it is that you're not getting paid, but, it really kind of depends on when the paycheck is due, if you will. Because the military gets paid twice a month when you're currently serving. It's the 15th and the 30th, roughly. But what it does do, to currently serving, military is, it puts the uncertainty out there. It restricts their training, like if in the Guard and Reserve, so any part-time forces in National Guard and Reserve forces, if they were scheduled to drill, over that weekend, they could not drill.
Yeah.
And that's a huge impact on, so then it's like they're scrambling, how do we make up that drill? Because we have to make it up. When do you make it up? Based on what was going to happen. Of course, this was January, so there might not have been, a lot of training in New Hampshire outdoors, but there probably was, maybe the infantry company, for instance. But whatever it was, all those soldiers' lives and their families were affected, and now they have to make up that drill weekend. On the active duty side, I'm sure there were a lot of things that didn't get done. Basically, everyone's just put, on standby, and where people are sent home, just say, hey, stay home because you're not going to do anything except twiddle your thumbs, on post. So it affects a lot.
They don't deploy anybody. They don't do anything. It's basically a complete shutdown for them.
Well, yeah, and again, obviously we have soldiers, in Iraq and Afghanistan that didn't affect him whatsoever.
Right.
But for stateside or soldiers, serving at any other, U.S. installation, across the world, other than Iraq and Afghanistan and probably maybe some other, Middle Eastern countries. South Korea, for instance. There was business as usual for sure.
Right. It didn't reach that far out over 3 days. But.
Right. Correct.
And
the North has reached out to the South to talks.
Yeah, I think isn't that because they want their They're people in the Olympics.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I don't think it has to do with. I don't think it has to do with like solidarity.
Yeah, but it's a step forward. You know what I mean? It's more than anything that we've had in a while. But at the same time, it scares the shit out of me because there was a game that came out probably like 10 years ago now called Homefront.
That's crazy.
When it was written by
it was Red Dawn basically.
Yeah,
but
basically,
futuristic.
But like not so much kind of. So this was when I think still when Kim Jong-il was still alive. They said that he passed on and his son took over, and he basically merged through talks all of Asia, and they basically EMP'd the West Side, and then took over. So then you went into the Red Dawn phase. I mean, it was a brutal game. I'm trying to remember the writer is actually, he does films and stuff. I'm trying to remember. I don't want to. It wasn't Scorsese. I'd have to look.
The
up.
campaign was moving,
but
I mean the game itself was trash for the most part, but the campaign itself was awesome.
Dope. It was too short, but it was like you were like over retaking California, whatever. So when I read this afternoon that he wanted talks, I'm like, fuck, man, this shit's gonna happen. We're gonna be like, I'm glad I'm on the east side, but damn, man, like that shit could happen.
Well, I can't remember where I heard this from, but apparently there's these two little booths on either side of the border where they just talk from those two booths.
Yeah, the demilitarized zone. Yeah, where that you saw the dude get shot.
No.
Did you see the guy get shot trying to defect?
That happens all the time.
No. Oh yeah, I'm sure that happens all the time.
He like took a Jeep, fucking started hauling ass, made it to like the border, got out, started running. They capped him like 5 times as he like hit the side. South Korea like grabbed. He survived, but it's a lot of scary shit over there. But that's why I think people serving for those 2 years, you'd get to see what the world actually is. Now, I'm not saying that America doesn't have a bad history with shit, or that we haven't done some terrible stuff. But at the same time, you get to see in Libya, there were still live auction sales trades going on in 2017.
For what?
They were selling slaves in Libya.
Yeah.
2017. Like that shit's still going on. So not.
Well, that's what the sex trade sex trafficking is. I mean,
that's
they taking kids and selling them like slaves. So yeah, there's some fucked up shit, but
you'd get to see that it's.
Yeah.
Yes, we've done some things, but we've also done a lot of good, and we can, if everybody would work together, we could continue to do a lot of good. And I'm still waiting for Star Trek, man. I'm not a Star Trek fan, but I'm waiting for that.
The Federation.
That world, like not to go conspiracy, but like where people are so against like the New World Order and the one world government or one world currency. Like I'm still waiting for that. Like where is that? I would rather be, this is Earth. That's Mars.
Okay, so I can't do this right now because this is going to send...
You have enough time for this?
No. This is going to send me into talking to you about the Nostradamus, like Baba Vanga rabbit hole I've been diving into lately, dude. Fucking some predictions for 2018. So... just real quick, I watched one the other day because
you need to stay off YouTube.
No. I've read on Nostradamus, tried to learn as much as I could about just the whole thing, just whether it's bullshit or not, right? So then I stumbled across this Baba Vanga one. This old woman, blind, blah blah blah. She's the same thing, does predictions. So just the other day, I watched this video of like 10 predictions that were supposed to come true. One was a major earthquake that was supposed to rock basically the west coast of the United States,
which we just had in Alaska.
Check.
Yeah.
A volcano that was supposed to erupt after has been dormant for so long, that was supposed to flood lava into and melt away. I forget exactly how the quatrain goes. Check. They just had one that they're watching that might erupt any day.
Well, it's not check yet because it didn't.
Not check yet, but half check. And then there's a total economy collapse due to a new way of trade.
Bitcoin.
Bam. Crypto motherfucking currency. We are almost check on these. So
those are almost checks,
you're gonna start watching checks. YouTube, man. You're gonna
start watching YouTube.
No. On this rabbit hole thing that you're gonna dive into.
I'll stick with my health and fitness videos.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe an occasional kung fu.
Some fucked up shit.
You gotta
I'm just
watch some
saying.
of them squirrely kung fu though. I do love kung fu videos.
I just watched the one the other day. Was Bruce Lee's only recorded fight, like real, like competition
yeah.
fight. It's crazy.
It was alright. That's the one that movie is kind of based on. The newest
Bruce Lee movie.
one. Yeah, I'm trying to remember his fucking name.
Oh yeah.
Doesn't really look like
Yeah.
Bruce Lee.
I
at
didn't
all.
I didn't watch that movie either, and I don't know how I missed it, but I'm a huge martial arts fan, so I gotta get that on demand.
I still have a
Yeah,
hard time
me
watching
too.
The Crow. With Brandon. Knowing what happened on that movie,
Awesome movie.
It is an awesome movie. I love the movie. I just still have a hard time watching it, knowing.
Yeah, they were trying to remake it, but I
Yeah.
think
They
shit keeps going
better
wrong.
not.
Like,
Yeah,
it's a
That
good
was-
story. You can't just
yeah.
hold it to Brandon Lee as much as
yeah. That was a
like-
shame though.
Was it shame?
Jet
Okay.
Li. I love Jet Li movies.
Jet Li movies?
Oh, dude, I
Differently.
Donnie,
Donnie Yen.
yeah, he's It Man. Those are some dope movies. Tony Jaa was really good on a lot of his stuff. Although his Ong Bak, the first one was great. The second one confused the shit out of me because it had nothing to do with the first one, and then I think even the third one is like a sequel to the second one, which really doesn't tie into the very first one. They went like Ong Bak. You've seen that one.
Yep, I have.
The second one, it brought it to almost like a it was almost like a reboot of like that first story never began, and the second one he was like
was a dream
as
sequence.
a kid he got like kidnapped by some like bandits that basically taught him how to fight, and then it carried on through the third one, but it was just very different than the first one, that it didn't make any sense to how they started it off. The Protector was really good too, where he's using like elephant tusk bones and fucking up some people. You ever see this shit, dude? Those are
Yeah.
great.
No, I haven't seen him.
Here's a good one. It's actually a South Korean, The Man from Nowhere.
Oh.
Check it out. It's subtitled.
Oh, I can deal with subtitles.
It's pretty cool.
That's the only way I watch like some of my anime is subtitles.
Yep.
It just sounds better. When I lived in Florida, they had like back in VHS days, Dragon Ball Z.
Yep.
They had a bunch from Japan. They'd watch and they'd have the subtitles and they'd swear. And then by the time I moved back, they were showing the subtitled ones on, or the sub ones on, or dubbed editions on Cartoon Network, and we'd all watch them. And then I'd buy like the VHS because I was an idiot and didn't buy DVDs.
Because you were young,
Yeah.
dumb, and broke.
Yeah. So and then
Oops, sorry.
when I did get the DVDs and you put on the subtitle version, like you'd see what they'd say, and it's like, wait a minute, they still edit that because I know what he said
Yep.
on the other one. And I'm pretty sure he swears there way more than what that is, but we don't like swearing in this country. Just gun violence. That's the only thing that
That's right.
American movies.
Bring it on.
Gun
Did you hear about
violence.
Detroit?
No sex.
Was it Detroit or Chicago?
Probably Chicago.
They've already had 5 murders.
Chicago.
5 murders in.
2018.
Damn.
And that's the ones that they found out.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
it's Chicago. Chicago's a fucking war zone. That's a scary place.
So it'll be Escape
Detroit
from
was.
Chicago instead of Escape from New York, where they turn it into a giant prison.
That can make sense.
Yeah.
All right. We're gonna wrap
Uh,
this up.
Yeah, we can start wrapping this up, dude. I'm excited for the beard competition.
Me
I
too.
know we get the event coming up in May.
When
where-
mine starts growing.
in May.
By May.
In May.
By
By
May.
May.
I can see that. maybe.
By
With
May.
the,
Yeah, the peds will kick in.
working out details with the folks at Able with Bearded Sinners. I still think, and I've already told our Facebook group of competitors that March 11th I'd like to get everybody together. So if we'll plan something
Cool.
where if you can have either a veteran that's been helped or a caseworker or whatever that has
Absolutely.
worked with them to share, so the guys, one, we can really express to the competitors, this is why we're doing this.
And I think that's important. It's great that we're all doing this, and of course, it's near and dear to my heart because I'm obviously involved heavily with the Veterans Count. But it really ties it in. I mean, you can give donations all day long, but whatever it is. But when you see it firsthand or hear it firsthand, and hear the impact that one organization has had, on a human life, especially a veteran, and or their family, I think it ties it all together. So absolutely, we'll make something happen.
And then we get the Summer Sizzler in August, but ties it all, wraps it all up.
I expect to fully have a Billy Gibbons ZZ Top beard by then. Just saying.
You know what?
Phil?
Fuck this. On that note, I'm out.
No, it's been great, Jim.
It has been.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for
Appreciate you
allowing
having
us
me.
to try this endeavor. I've never done a fundraiser before.
Me neither. This is a learning process for me too.
Yeah.
It's still a learning process for me, honestly, because again, I've spent my whole adult career in the military, 31 years, and all of a sudden I get involved with I was like, yeah, I'll retire and get involved with some veteran organizations. So I get approached and joined Veterans Count, and now I'm like a professional fundraiser. I was like, damn, how'd that happen? But I mean, sometimes it's cold calling. I mean, we may not have a contact in a particular company, and but we're trying to actually, hopefully all our chapters will, but we're trying to expand our donor base, number one. I mean, because we don't want to hit donor fatigue. Everyone, I think, tends to go after the big dogs, the big donors that they know that if we can get something, it'll be a large donation, which is great. But again, there are a lot of competing organizations out there, whether they're veteran oriented or not. But honestly, we'd like to get to the point where we have an annual giving campaign. You see them on TV, whether it's Wounded Warrior, Shriners Hospital, St. Jude's, whatever, only $19 a month. That's the point where we want to get to, where, we're not constantly, hammering people to donate. It's, oh yeah, Veterans Count, every month I donate to Veterans Count, because they do great work.
Yeah.
So that's where we want to get, the point we want to get to. But in the meantime, until we get there, we're going to have, events like this and other events. I will mention, before we sign off here, and bear with me as I fire up my phone real quick, but our next formal event for the Manchester chapter of Veterans Count, we're actually having a fashion show. It'll be our second annual, and it is on March 13th, starting at 5 o'clock. And it's actually going to be at the Manchester Country Club, which is in Bedford on South River Road. We pulled this off last year, just as, again, we'll try it. I think we had about 12 or 15 models, all former military. It was really cool. We had some amputees that were models, which was really great. All the clothing was donated, that we tried on, and it was a fun event. So March 13th, starting around 5 o'clock at the Manchester Country Club. And,
what kind of fashion?
It's basically whatever clothing vendors we can get. For instance, I tried on a couple of sport coats, and some other people had on suits. We had women veterans, so they had on dresses or whatever the case may be. It depends on what the vendors we get, and what they want to showcase. Whether it's a suit, whether it's sport coat, sporty look, day at the beach, whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all different. We most of us went through a couple of changes of clothes that evening, and but no, it was a fun event, and we raised some money, and hopefully again raised awareness. So our second annual is March 13th.
Awesome.
Nice.
But appreciate the time, and hopefully folks will show some interest, at least in the beard competition for sure, and we'll keep on getting the word out for us. I appreciate it.
Yeah, try to make this an annual thing, although I've already been told by several people they will never shave again.
Oh, the beard thing's out next year. We're going to come up with a really good
we'll have
idea.
a new idea.
That's right.
For next time, but we really do appreciate it, and because not only are we getting the word out about you, but you're telling people about us, so it's
awesome.
One hand washes the other, I believe is the term. Right?
No, yeah, we'll go with that.
Washing hands, that's good.
Yeah.
That's all.
Have a good night.
Cheers.
Thank-
Cheers.